clarifies in what sense reason is an instrument of knowledge. Okay, so reason is like a mirror. So mirror is a body like other bodies, but what differentiates it from other bodies that it is so transparent that through it you can see other things in it because of its transparency. So it shares a body with other things, for example, a chair or a table, or less transparent glasses, but it is also differentiated from the body through this characteristics of transparency through which we can see images in it of things which we cannot see in other body. So that doesn't mean that the mirror is not a body and it's some immaterial thing. It just means that it's a body which is very transparent, or which has certain characteristics which other bodies don't have. In a similar manner, reason is like any other material things, but it has transparency in a way a mirror has a transparency, and because of that transparency, through it we can acquire knowledge in a way that we cannot through other instruments of our mind, for example, or of our body, for example. And then he goes on to give another example of an eye. Eye is a material thing, just like, for example, forehead, and it has a lot of similarity with other part of human body, but it is differentiated from other part of bodies through its characteristics. It has certain characteristics which my forehead doesn't have it, or my ears don't have it, and through those characteristics an eye can see, but I cannot see through my forehead, for example. In a similar way, فنسبة هذه الغريزة. In a similar way, reason. That's how reason is related to knowledge. So the relationship between knowledge and reason can be understood on the example of the relationship between a mirror and what is seen through mirror, or the relationship between an eye and what is seen through an eye. فنسبة هذه الغريزة إلى العلوم كنسبة العين إلى الرؤية. So here Imam Al-Ghazali is making that thing clear, the difference between instrument, process, and the product. So knowledge is a product, and reason is an instrument, and then there's a process which is reasoning, in a similar way in which a mirror is an instrument and there's a process, and through that we see an image. So knowledge is like image, and this here process is like reasoning, and mirror is like reason. In a similar way, our eye, that's like reason. That's why sometimes metaphorically people call reason the eye of our mind. So they're the process of light, and and the process goes through in the brain. In a similar way, they're the process that's called reasoning, and here we see objects which are seen, and here knowledge which is acquired. So the reason is to our mind, like an eye is to the body, and the objects seen by eyes are to reason. Knowledge acquired through reason is like an object seen through eye. So that's a very good example. So it's clear that reason is an instrument and a power, a faculty, an organ in a sense, and it makes clear in what sense it's an organ or an instrument, and what's the relationship between it and its subject. Okay, and then he goes on to say something which is very important, and that will become more clear when we go on to other conceptions of rationality or reason. So ونسبة القرآن والشرع الشريف إلى هذه الغريزة في سياقها إلى انكشاف العلوم كنسبة النور الشمس إلى البصر فهكذا ينبغي أن تفهم هذه الغريزة. So what's the relationship between this reason and the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or the hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, or Shara al-Sharif in general? Imam Al-Ghazali gives us another metaphor here, and the metaphor is that of the sun, the light of the sun. He's giving, but we can consider the metaphor in general. So an eye sees the object that's necessary most of the time, but it's not sufficient. You need the light. Only then you can see the objects. In a similar way, reason is necessary, instrument of knowledge, but it's not sufficient because you need light, and light in this regard is the light of the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and the light of the teaching and the explanation of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, without which we might have some knowledge, as in a dim light we might be able to see objects, but we won't be able to see them as they are, as they should be seen, or as in reality. So that's a great metaphor here. So reason is necessary, but it's not sufficient. It needs to be understood, and it needs to function in the light of all the lights, which is the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and its explanation by Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Anyway, this is a good point to stop, but let's read the text once more and see if we left something, and then we move on to the second definition.